This is a Year 8 English video about Chapter 12 of the book Once. If we have a look at the anaphora right at the beginning, the paragraph starts with the word once, as every chapter in the book does. Once a dentist stopped me from asking a Nazi officer about my parents, and I was really mad at him. Now, Felix being mad at him isn't really the theme of this. The importance of parents is a real important theme, as we're going to see later on. But let's just have a quick look at the setting. Most of this chapter happens at Barney's cellar. At the beginning section, Felix recounts, remember, he's had a sleep and a sit on the bucket, but he recounts what happened last night out in the ghetto when he was helping Barney with his dentistry. But the rest of the chapter effectively is in Barney's cellar. They do build a tower out of beds so they can look out onto the street and they see people in the ghetto walking, someone collapsing and people walking over them. But they do see out into the ghetto, but all of the action that takes place in this really emotional chapter of the book is in the cellar. When we look at characters, we need to look at Felix. Now, I'm on page 107, and you should turn there too. There's many interesting things that happen prior to this, but here is where we really get stuck in to the character development in this chapter. And it all flows around Zelda and her need to know that her parents are dead. She's still believing, because of the stories that have been told to her, that her parents are alive, and she believes she sees them through the cracks in the roof, walking along the street in Warsaw. I look at how desperately she's searching, says Felix, and suddenly I know I have to tell her. I don't want to, and I don't know how to, but I have to. The poor kid can't go on like this. She needs to know the truth. Felix speaks to Barney. You're right, Zelda does need to know. So here we have a big issue that occurs in Felix's life. So long he's been telling stories, both to himself and to other people, to hide the truth, to focus on other things, to divert people from the truth. In fact, even promoting outright lies to give hope to people. But now he realizes that she needs to know the truth. It can't go on like this. After a conversation with Barney, Barney says, just tell her the story of what you saw. He says, you don't have to make anything up. So here we're telling a true story. We're not embellishing. We're not adding flourishes to the story. It's just the bare bones of the story. I tell Zelda the story of what I saw. She doesn't believe me. I tell her again, still without making anything up. I'm trembling myself, partly at the memory of what I saw and partly because, for Zelda, my story has made her parents dead. He feels responsible in telling her that now it's a reality for Zelda that her parents have died. Felix has taken on responsibility in this, and it opens up a can of worms for the other characters in the story. We also find Barney's relationship with Felix changing as well. At the beginning of this chapter, Felix is angry with Barney, and in previous chapters he doesn't understand why he's being held captive, he feels, by Barney. Here he confides in Barney about telling Zelda about her parents. Barney says, I think it's better if you do it. You've both been through a lot together and she trusts you, and you were there. So Barney's a trustworthy person, but this also says something about Zelda. Barney's observing that Zelda trusts Felix. So there's a real bond that's happening between the two children, and Barney is the person that brings that out to us. So after Felix tells the story, the true story, the facts to Zelda about her parents, stories come thick and fast. Ruth stops brushing her hair. Once she whispers. Notice the use of the anaphora. Once is now repeated every time a story is being told. We see it here. Once she whispers, some goblins hit my dad with sticks. They hit him with sticks till he died. A goblin is a metaphor, and we'll discuss this later, for a Nazi. Jacob sobbing too. His Nana was burned. I got home from school, they were all burned. Nana, Poppy, and Ali and Martha and Oleg, all of his family burned to death. Henrik stands up. They killed Siggy and cut his tail off. He's recounting the story of the Nazis killing and torturing his dog. Chaya tells her story, but she tells it within a fictional story. Once a princess lived in a castle, she said, using the anaphora. It was a small castle. Now, this isn't true necessarily, but she goes on to share about how her family have been killed. Moishe is still chewing his wood, but tears are running down his face. Everyone's crying. It's quite an emotional end to this chapter and real character development where you realise the pain and the suffering they've had in their lives, these young children, and the brutality that they faced. I take Chaya's hand for a while, then I go over to Barney. Barney lets me hug Zelda. I can feel the sadness shaking her whole body. Now, even in this emotionally tense time where he's had to confront the truth, we see at the end that Felix still isn't willing to acknowledge the truth in his own life. My tears are different. I feel so lucky because somewhere out there I know my mum and dad are alive. So Felix is not yet in a place to confront the truth about his own life.